the police cruiser pulling up to my driveway on a freezing February morning in Boulder. Colorado wasn't exactly how I planned to start my Saturday, but thanks to Patricia Henderson from the HOA, here we were. I had just poured my first cup of coffee when I saw the black and white vehicle through my kitchen window. My golden retriever, Murphy, was still asleep on his dog bed in the corner, completely oblivious to the chaos about to unfold. I set down my mug and walked to the front door, genuinely confused about what could possibly warrant a police visit. I had paid all my tickets, my registration was current, and I hadn't even played my music loud in months. Opening the door, I was greeted by Officer Martinez, a middle-aged man with tired eyes who looked like he would rather be anywhere else. Behind him, standing on my front lawn with her arms crossed and her perfectly styled blonde hair somehow immune to the bitter wind, was Patricia Henderson. She was the vice president of our HOA and had made it her personal mission to make my life miserable since I moved into the Meadowbrook Estates neighborhood 6 months ago. "Good morning, sir. I'm Officer Martinez. We received a complaint about pet waste violations on the property," the officer said, his voice professional but slightly apologetic. "Pet waste violations." I repeated, looking past him at Patricia, who had that smug expression she always wore when she thought she had caught me doing something wrong. "What are you talking about?" Patricia stepped forward, nearly shouldering past the officer. "Don't play dumb with me, Derek. I have been documenting your complete disregard for our HOA regulations for months now. You let your dog defecate all over the common areas and you never clean it up. It's disgusting and it's a health hazard." I stared at her, genuinely baffled. "Patricia, I always pick up after Murphy. Always. I have a whole drawer full of dog waste bags in my house, and I keep them in every jacket pocket." "Oh, really?" she said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "Then explain to me why I have found dog waste near the mailboxes, by the community garden, and along the walking path at least a dozen times this winter. Your dog is the only golden retriever in this section of the neighborhood." Officer Martinez held up a hand. "Madam, let me handle this, please." He turned to me. "Sir, do you have a dog?" "Yes, his name is Murphy. He's a golden retriever 3 years old, but I promise you I clean up after him every single time. I'm really careful about it because I know how strict the HOA is here." Patricia let out a harsh laugh. "Strict? We have rules for a reason, Derek. Rules that everyone else manages to follow. But you seem to think you're above them. Well, not anymore. I called the police because the HOA has the authority to fine you, but given the extent of your violations, I think criminal charges for public health violations might be more appropriate." My jaw dropped. "Criminal charges? For dog poop? Are you serious right now?" Officer Martinez looked uncomfortable. "Madam, I don't think criminal charges are warranted here. This is really a civil matter between the homeowner and the HOA." "I want it documented," Patricia insisted. "I want an official police report stating that I made this complaint and that he was warned. The HOA board meeting is Monday night and I intend to bring this up. We're talking about fines in the thousands of dollars, Derek. Maybe that will finally get through to you." I felt my frustration building. "I'm telling you, I didn't do this. I don't know what dog waste you're finding, but it's not from Murphy." "There are no other golden retrievers in this area," Patricia repeated slowly, like she was talking to a child. "I've lived here for 12 years. I know every dog in this neighborhood. Your dog is the only one that matches the evidence." "Evidence? What evidence? Did you do DNA testing on dog poop?" I asked, and immediately regretted my sarcastic tone. Patricia's face turned red. "Mock me all you want, but the HOA covenant is legally binding. You signed it when you bought your house, And that covenant clearly states that all pet waste must be immediately collected and properly disposed of. You're in violation and you will pay for it. Officer Martinez pulled out a small notepad. Sir, I'm going to document this complaint as requested. But I want to be clear, this is not a criminal matter. This is between you and your homeowners association. I would recommend you attend that board meeting on Monday and address these concerns. I'll be there, I said firmly, glaring at Patricia, because I didn't do what she's accusing me of. We'll see about that, Patricia said. She turned to the officer. I also want to show you the evidence. Come with me. I grabbed my coat and followed them, with Murphy trotting beside me on his leash. I wasn't about to let Patricia spin some narrative without me being present. We walked down my driveway and toward the community mailbox area, about 100 yards away. The entire neighborhood was still covered in snow from the storm we had gotten 3 days earlier. It had dumped about 8 inches on us, and while the roads were cleared, most of the common areas still had significant snow cover. Patricia marched ahead confidently, her expensive winter boots crunching through the snow. She stopped near a cluster of mailboxes and pointed dramatically at the ground. There, right there, you see it? Officer Martinez and I looked where she was pointing. There was nothing but white snow. I don't see anything, madam, the officer said carefully. Patricia's confidence faltered for just a moment. It's under the snow. I saw it 2 days ago before the storm hit. There were at least 3 piles of dog waste right here. But it's snowed since then, I said. So how do you know it's still there? How do you know it was even there to begin with? Because I saw it with my own eyes, Derek. I even took pictures. She pulled out her phone and started scrolling through her photos. Here, look at this. She held out her phone and I could see a photo of what appeared to be dog waste near the mailboxes. The photo was dated from several days ago, before the recent snowstorm. But the image was too far away and too blurry to determine anything specific about the waste or what kind of dog it came from. That could be from any dog, I said. And even if my dog was in this area, which he has been because I check my mail, that doesn't prove anything. Other dogs walk through here too. Not golden retrievers, Patricia insisted, but other dogs, I repeated. Dogs that could leave waste if their owners aren't responsible. Officer Martinez closed his notepad. Madam, sir, I've documented the complaint as requested, but there's really nothing more I can do here. This is a matter for your HOA to handle internally. I would suggest taking detailed photos, maybe installing a camera if the HOA allows it, to catch anyone who isn't cleaning up after their pets. Patricia looked furious that the officer wasn't taking her side more aggressively. Fine, but I'm still bringing this to the board meeting on Monday. Derek, you should prepare yourself for significant fines. I'll be ready, I said coldly, because I have nothing to hide. The officer left shortly after, probably relieved to escape the pettiness of HOA drama. Patricia shot me one more withering look before stalking off toward her house, which was 4 doors down from mine. I stood there for a moment, watching her go, feeling a mix of anger and bewilderment. I had been nothing but a good neighbor since moving here. I kept my lawn maintained. I followed the ridiculous rules about what color my front door could be. I made sure my trash cans weren't visible from the street except on collection days, and I absolutely always cleaned up after Murphy. The accusation was not only false, but it felt personally targeted. Walking back to my house with Murphy, I started thinking about the situation more carefully. Patricia had been antagonistic toward me from the very beginning. When I first moved in, she had appeared at my door within hours with a massive binder containing all the HOA rules and regulations. She had spent over an hour going through various violations that previous owners had committed and warning me not to make the same mistakes. Since then, she had sent me multiple letters about minor issues. My car was parked 3 inches over the line in my own driveway. My Christmas lights were the wrong shade of white. My mailbox flag was faded and needed immediate replacement. Each letter came with threats of fines and legal action if I didn't comply immediately. I had complied with everything, no matter how ridiculous, because I didn't want the hassle of fighting with the HOA. But this was different. This was an accusation that could actually result in serious fines and impact my reputation in the neighborhood. I wasn't going to just roll over on this one. Back inside, I made a fresh cup of coffee and sat down at my kitchen table with my laptop. I pulled up the HOA covenant documents and started reading through the sections about pets and violations. The rules stated that pet owners were responsible for immediately cleaning up after their animals on all common property, and that failure to do so could result in fines starting at $250 per violation. The fines could increase with repeated offenses. If Patricia had documented a dozen instances, that could potentially be $3,000 in fines. That was insane. I needed evidence. I needed to prove that I wasn't responsible for whatever dog waste Patricia was finding. I spent the next hour researching security cameras and trying to figure out the best way to document Murphy's walks. I decided to start taking photos every time we went out, showing that I had waste bags with me and that I was picking up after him. That afternoon, I took Murphy for his regular walk around the neighborhood. I made sure to bring my phone, and I took several photos and even a short video of myself putting a bag in the trash after Murphy did his business near a tree on the common area. It felt ridiculous to be documenting something so mundane, but I needed to protect myself. As I walked past Patricia's house, I noticed she was in her front window watching. I gave her a friendly wave, which she didn't return. Her house was immaculate as always. Perfect landscaping, perfect paint job, perfect everything. She had a small dog door that I had noticed before, though I rarely saw her with a dog. I assumed she must have one if she had the door installed, but in 6 months of living here, I had never actually seen Patricia with a pet. The weekend passed slowly. I couldn't stop thinking about the Monday board meeting and what Patricia might say. I started preparing my defense, organizing photos and keeping meticulous records of every time I took Murphy out. On Sunday afternoon, my neighbor Tom stopped by. He lived 2 houses down and was one of the few friendly people I had met in the neighborhood. He was in his 60s, retired from teaching, and had lived in Meadowbrook Estates for almost 20 years. "Hey, Derek, I heard Patricia called the cops on you," he said when I answered the door. "The whole neighborhood is talking about it," I groaned. "Of course they are. She's accusing me of not picking up after Murphy." Tom shook his head. "Patricia's been on a warpath lately. She's mad because the board voted down her proposal to ban all dogs over 50 pounds from the neighborhood. She seems to think big dogs are ruining the place." "Murphy is 48 pounds, I said. "He wouldn't have even been affected by that rule." "Doesn't matter to Patricia. She's decided you're the problem and she's going to make you pay for it. I just wanted to give you a heads up that she's been going around to houses collecting signatures on a petition to have you fined. A bunch of people signed it just to get her to leave them alone." "That's great," I said sarcastically. "So I'm already convicted before the board meeting even happens." Tom looked sympathetic. "Listen, I didn't sign anything and I don't think you're the kind of person who would ignore dog waste. You've always seemed responsible to me, but Patricia has a lot of influence on that board. She's been vice president for 8 years and people are scared to cross her. My advice? Get a lawyer or at least bring documentation to that meeting. Don't let her steamroll you." Thanks, Tom. I appreciate the warning. After he left, I spent the rest of Sunday evening preparing a presentation for the board meeting. I printed out photos. I created a timeline of my walks with Murphy, and I even got a written statement from my veterinarian confirming that Murphy was healthy, up to date on all vaccinations, and that I had always been a responsible pet owner. Monday morning, I barely slept. I was anxious about the meeting, which was scheduled for 7 in the evening at the community center. I spent the day at work distracted, constantly checking my phone and rehearsing what I was going to say. When I finally arrived at the community center that evening, I was surprised by how many people were there. The meeting room was nearly full, with at least 40 residents scattered among the folding chairs. Clearly, word had spread about the drama, and people wanted to watch it unfold. The HOA board consisted of 5 members. There was Gregory Walsh, the president, a stern-looking man in his 50s who wore reading glasses on a chain. Next to him sat Patricia, the vice president, who looked extremely pleased with the turnout. The other 3 board members were Linda Nguyen, the treasurer, Harold Simpson, the secretary, and Margaret Porter, a member at large. Gregory called the meeting to order at 7 sharp. They went through standard business first, approving minutes from the last meeting, discussing a proposal for new landscaping near the entrance of the neighborhood, and reviewing the budget. I sat there impatiently, my folder of evidence clutched in my lap. Finally, after nearly 45 minutes, Gregory cleared his throat. Next on the agenda, we have a complaint filed by Patricia Henderson regarding violations of the pet waste policy. Patricia, would you like to present your case? Patricia stood up, smoothing her skirt and picking up her own folder. Thank you, Gregory. As many of you know, I have been serving on this board for 8 years because I care deeply about maintaining the standards and property values of our beautiful neighborhood. Part of maintaining those standards is ensuring that all residents follow the rules we have agreed to in our covenant. She paused dramatically, looking around the room. Several people were watching with interest. I noticed Tom sitting in the back, giving me an encouraging nod. Over the past 6 months, since Derek Jameson moved into the neighborhood, there has been a significant increase in pet waste violations in our common areas. I have personally documented at least 12 instances of dog waste being left near the mailboxes, along the walking paths, and near our community garden. This is not only disgusting and unsanitary, it is a direct violation of our HOA Covenant Section 7.3, which clearly states that all pet owners must immediately collect and dispose of any waste their animals produce on common property. She pulled out a stack of photos and passed them to Gregory. I have photographic evidence of these violations. I have also noted that Mr. Jameson owns a golden retriever, and he is the only resident in this section of the neighborhood with that particular breed. The evidence clearly points to him as the responsible party. Gregory looked through the photos, frowning. These photos show dog waste, but how do we know it came from Mr. Jameson's dog specifically? Because there are no other golden retrievers in this area, Patricia said firmly. I've lived here for 12 years and I know every dog in this neighborhood. His dog is the only match. But these photos don't actually show the dog in the act, Linda, the treasurer, pointed out. They just show waste. It could be from any dog. Patricia's expression tightened. I saw his dog in the area on multiple occasions. I know it was him. Did you actually witness the dog leaving waste and see Mr. Jameson not cleaning it up? Harold asked, adjusting his glasses. Patricia hesitated for just a moment. Not directly, no. But the circumstantial evidence is overwhelming. Who else could it be? Gregory turned to me. Mr. Jameson, would you like to respond to these accusations? I stood up, feeling my heart racing. Yes, thank you. First of all, I want to state clearly that I have never, not once, failed to clean up after my dog Murphy. I take this responsibility seriously, and I always carry waste bags with me on every walk. I opened my folder and pulled out my own photos. I've been documenting my walks since this accusation came up last Saturday. Here are photos showing me with waste bags, photos of me picking up after Murphy, and photos of me disposing of the waste properly. I also have a written statement from my veterinarian confirming that I'm a responsible pet owner. I passed the materials to Gregory, who examined them carefully. The other board members leaned in to look as well. This is all very recent documentation, Patricia interjected. Of course he's being careful now that he's been caught. That doesn't prove anything about his behavior over the past 6 months. And your photos don't prove anything about Murphy, I shot back. You didn't see him leaving that waste. You're just assuming it was him because he's a golden retriever, but there are other dogs in this neighborhood that could be responsible. Name one golden retriever besides yours, Patricia challenged. I don't know every dog's breed, I admitted. But there are dozens of dogs in this neighborhood. Any of them could have left that waste. You're targeting me without any real proof. Margaret, the member at large, spoke up for the first time. I think Mr. Jameson has a point. Without actually witnessing the violation, it's hard to assign blame definitively. Patricia, have you considered installing cameras to catch the actual culprit? Patricia looked frustrated. The HOA budget doesn't allow for security cameras in every common area. What about trail cameras? Tom suddenly spoke up from the back of the room. They're not expensive and they're motion activated. If there's really a problem with dog waste in specific areas, put up a few cameras and catch whoever is actually responsible. Several people in the audience murmured in agreement. Gregory looked thoughtful. That's actually a reasonable suggestion. Patricia, what do you think? Patricia clearly didn't like this idea, probably because she had already made up her mind that I was guilty. But she couldn't really argue against it without looking unreasonable. I suppose we could try that, she said stiffly. Good, Gregory said. I propose we table the fines against Mr. Jameson until we have more concrete evidence. We'll install a few trail cameras in the areas where violations have been reported and see what we capture. If Mr. Jameson's dog is responsible, the cameras will prove it. If it's another dog, we'll know who to pursue. All in favor, Linda, Harold, and Margaret all raised their hands immediately. Patricia sat there with her arms crossed, clearly furious. I vote against it, she said. We have enough evidence already. Motion carries 4-1, Gregory said. Mr. Jameson, you're not being fined at this time, but please continue to be diligent about cleaning up after your pet. Patricia, can you purchase 3 or 4 trail cameras and install them in the problem areas? The HOA will reimburse you. Patricia's mouth was pressed into a thin line. Fine, I'll take care of it. The meeting continued with other business, but I barely heard any of it. I was relieved that I wasn't being fined, but I was also angry that Patricia had put me through this circus in the first place. When the meeting finally adjourned around 9, several neighbors came up to me to offer their support. Don't let Patricia get to you, one woman said. She tried to fine us last year because our grass was a 1/4 inch too long. She's impossible. Tom clapped me on the shoulder. Good job standing up for yourself. Let those cameras prove your innocence. As I walked out to my car, Patricia intercepted me in the parking lot. This isn't over, Derek. Those cameras are going to prove I was right. Then I guess we'll see, won't we? I replied calmly, though inside I was seething. I drove home feeling emotionally exhausted. Murphy greeted me at the door, completely oblivious to all the drama surrounding him. I scratched behind his ears and gave him a treat. "You're a good boy," I told him, "and we're going to prove it." Over the next few days, I watched as Patricia installed trail cameras in 3 different locations around the neighborhood. She mounted them on posts near the mailboxes, along the main walking path, and near the community garden. I made sure to stay visible whenever I walked Murphy in those areas, waving at the cameras to show I had nothing to hide. The weather started to warm up slightly as February progressed. The snow began melting, revealing the ground that had been covered for weeks. I continued my routine of carefully documenting every walk and every cleanup, building an ironclad record of my responsibility as a pet owner. About a week after the board meeting, I was walking Murphy near the mailboxes when I noticed something odd. As the snow melted away, several piles of dog waste were becoming visible near the base of the mailbox cluster. I stopped and stared at them, feeling a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature. I had not walked Murphy in this exact spot for at least 3 days, maybe 4. We had taken different routes lately because the main path was muddy from the snowmelt, which meant this waste had been here for a while, buried under the snow. I pulled out my phone and took several photos of the waste, making sure to capture the location and the time stamp. Then I looked up at the trail camera Patricia had installed. The red light was blinking, indicating it was active. Whatever dog had left this waste, it should be recorded. I continued my walk, but my mind was racing. If Murphy wasn't responsible for this waste and the camera would prove it, then who was? There were plenty of other dogs in the neighborhood, but Patricia had been so certain it was Murphy. What if she was wrong? That evening, I was sitting on my couch watching television when my phone rang. It was Tom. "Derek, you need to hear this," he said, his voice excited. I was talking to my wife about the whole HOA situation, and she reminded me of something. Patricia has a dog, a golden retriever. I sat up straight. "What? I've never seen her with a dog." "Most people haven't. She keeps it inside almost all the time. But we saw her with it about 2 years ago when we were out for an evening walk. It's an older dog, maybe 10 or 11 years old. Golden retriever, female." My mind was spinning. But why would she install a dog door if she keeps the dog inside? "That's the thing," Tom said. "What if she's been letting the dog out through that door to do its business? What if the dog has been going out on its own and Patricia doesn't realize it? Her house is right near the mailboxes. The dog could easily walk over there, do its business, and come back." "And she's been blaming me," I said slowly. "She's been blaming my dog for what her own dog has been doing." "Exactly. And if those trail cameras catch her dog in the act, she's going to have some serious explaining to do." After hanging up with Tom, I felt a mix of vindication and anger. If Patricia's own dog was responsible for the violations she had accused me of, she owed me a massive apology. More than that, she had wasted police time. She had tried to fine me thousands of dollars, and she had damaged my reputation in the neighborhood. I decided to be patient. The cameras would reveal the truth. I just had to wait. Another week passed. The weather continued to warm and more snow melted away, revealing more dog waste in various locations. I made sure to photograph every pile I found, noting the dates and locations. None of them were in places where I had recently walked Murphy. Finally, about 3 weeks after the board meeting, I received an email from Gregory Walsh, the HOA president. It was brief and to the point. "Please attend an emergency HOA board meeting Thursday at 7. Important evidence to review regarding pet waste violations." Thursday couldn't come fast enough. When I arrived at the community center that evening, the atmosphere was completely different from the previous meeting. There were fewer residents in attendance, maybe a dozen people including Tom. Patricia was already seated at the board table, but she looked uncomfortable. Her usual confident demeanor was gone. Gregory called the meeting to order and got straight to the point. Thank you all for coming on short notice. We've been reviewing footage from the trail cameras, and we've made some discoveries that need to be addressed immediately. He pulled out a laptop and connected it to a projector on the wall. I'm going to show you 3 video clips captured over the past 2 weeks. These clips show the animal responsible for the pet waste violations in our common areas. The first video started playing. It showed the area near the mailboxes, date stamped from 4 days ago at 6:15 in the morning. The image was clear despite the early hour. I watched as a golden retriever walked into frame, sniffed around the base of the mailboxes, and then squatted to defecate. The dog was wearing a collar with a tag clearly visible. After finishing, the dog walked off camera in the direction of Patricia's house. The second video was from 2 days later, same location, similar time. The same golden retriever appeared, repeated the behavior, and left. The third video was from just yesterday, but this time it showed the walking path near the community garden. Same dog, same behavior, same direction of departure. Gregory paused the video and turned to face the board and the audience. These videos clearly show a golden retriever violating the pet waste policy. However, this is not Mr. Jameson's dog Murphy. He zoomed in on the paused video, showing the dog's collar tag. We were able to enhance the image enough to read the tag number. I contacted the county registration office and confirmed the identity of this dog. He turned to look directly at Patricia, who had gone pale. This dog is registered to you, Patricia. Her name is Daisy and she's been registered to your address for 11 years. The room erupted in whispers and gasps. I sat there stunned, even though Tom had warned me this might be the case. Actually seeing the proof was something else entirely. Patricia opened her mouth and closed it several times, looking like a fish out of water. I didn't know. I had no idea Daisy was going out. How could you not know your dog was leaving your house? Linda asked, her voice sharp. She goes out through the dog door early in the morning, Patricia stammered. I thought she was just using the backyard. I didn't realize she was leaving the property. Your backyard is fenced, Harold pointed out. How is your dog getting out? Patricia's face flushed red. There's a gap in the fence. I've been meaning to fix it. I didn't think it was big enough for her to get through. Gregory looked stern. Patricia, you've been accusing Mr. Jameson for months of violations that your own dog was committing. You called the police. You tried to levy thousands of dollars in fines, and you damaged this man's reputation in our community. This is completely unacceptable. I didn't know, Patricia repeated weakly. I honestly thought it was his dog. I saw him walking that dog near the mailboxes. I just assumed. You assumed without evidence, Margaret said coldly, and you pushed for punishment without proof. As a board member, you should have been more responsible. I finally spoke up. Patricia, you owe me an apology. You put me through hell over something your own dog was doing. Patricia looked at me, and for the first time since I had met her, she looked genuinely remorseful. I'm sorry, Derek. I truly didn't know. I was wrong to accuse you without being certain. An apology isn't enough, Linda said. Patricia, you've abused your position on this board. I think we need to discuss your continued service as vice president. Patricia's expression shifted from remorse to panic. You can't remove me from the board. I've served this community for 8 years. And in those 8 years, how many other people have you falsely accused? Tom called out from the audience. How many other residents have you harassed without real evidence? Several people in the audience began speaking up, sharing their own stories of Patricia's overzealous enforcement of HOA rules. It was clear that I wasn't the only one who had suffered from her behavior. Gregory held up his hand for silence. This is getting out of hand. Patricia, I'm going to recommend to the board that we vote on your position. But first, we need to address the immediate issue. Your dog has violated the pet waste policy multiple times, captured on camera. According to our covenant, that's at least 3 documented violations, which would be $750 in fines. Patricia's eyes widened. You're going to fine me. The rules apply to everyone, Gregory said firmly, including board members, especially board members. We can't have a double standard. The board voted unanimously to fine Patricia $750 for the documented violations. They also voted, 4-0 with Patricia abstaining, to remove her from her position as vice president. She would remain on the board as a regular member, but she would no longer have the authority she had wielded for so many years. Patricia sat there in shock as the votes were tallied. When Gregory asked if she had anything to say, she just shook her head mutely. Mr. Jameson, Gregory said, turning to me. On behalf of the board, I want to apologize for what you've been put through. Patricia's actions were inappropriate, and we should have demanded more concrete evidence before moving forward with any accusations. I appreciate that, I said. I just want to make sure this doesn't happen to anyone else. Agreed. We're going to be implementing new policies about how violations are documented and reported. From now on, we'll require either video evidence or multiple witness statements before pursuing fines. The meeting wrapped up shortly after. As people filed out, several residents came up to thank me for standing up to Patricia. Tom gave me a high five and his wife, Susan, hugged me. I'm so glad the truth came out, she said. Patricia needed to be taken down a peg or two. As I walked to my car, I saw Patricia sitting alone in her vehicle, her head resting on the steering wheel. Part of me felt bad for her. She had been humiliated in front of the entire community and lost her position of power. But another part of me remembered how she had made me feel, the stress and anger and helplessness of being falsely accused. I went home and spent the evening relaxing with Murphy, who was blissfully unaware that he had been exonerated of all charges. I gave him extra treats and let him sleep on the couch next to me, something I didn't usually allow. Over the next few days, word spread through the neighborhood about what had happened. Several neighbors who had been cold or distant toward me suddenly became friendly. I received apology notes from people who had signed Patricia's petition against me. One couple even brought me a gift basket. Patricia, for her part, seemed to disappear from neighborhood life. I didn't see her at the mailboxes or walking around the common areas like I used to. Tom told me that she had finally fixed her fence and that Daisy was no longer escaping into the neighborhood. About a month after the emergency board meeting, I was checking my mail when Patricia approached me. She looked smaller somehow, less intimidating than she used to be. "Derek, can I talk to you for a moment?" she asked quietly. I nodded, curious about what she had to say. "I wanted to apologize again, properly this time. What I did to you was wrong. I was so convinced I was right that I didn't stop to consider I might be mistaken. I let my position on the board go to my head, and I became exactly the kind of person I always criticized, someone who abuses their authority." I could see that she was genuinely remorseful. "I appreciate you saying that, Patricia. It's been a rough few months. I know, and I'm sorry. I paid my fines, and I've been doing a lot of thinking about how I've treated people in this neighborhood. I've been volunteering at the animal shelter, actually. It's been good for me. Reminds me why we have rules in the first place, to protect and help, not to punish and control." "That's good to hear," I said, softening a bit. "I hope Daisy is doing well." "She is. She's getting older, and I think those morning excursions were her way of having a little adventure. Now I take her for proper walks every morning so she doesn't feel the need to escape." Patricia paused, then added, "I'm not asking for forgiveness. I know I don't deserve it. I just wanted you to know that I'm trying to be better." "We all make mistakes," I said. "What matters is what we do after we realize we were wrong." Patricia nodded, looking relieved. "Thank you for saying that. I'll let you get back to your day." As she walked away, I felt a sense of closure. The situation had been resolved, the truth had come out, and even Patricia seemed to have learned something from the experience. Life in Meadowbrook Estates became much more pleasant after that. The HOA board elected Linda as the new vice president, and she brought a much more reasonable approach to the position. The trail cameras were left up in the common areas, and they actually did catch a couple of other pet owners who weren't cleaning up after their dogs. But instead of immediately threatening fines and legal action, Linda would approach the owners privately with the video evidence and give them a warning first. Most people were embarrassed and made sure to be more careful after that. Murphy and I continued our daily walks, no longer feeling like we were being watched and judged. I became friends with Tom and Susan and several other neighbors. The community started to feel like an actual community instead of a collection of houses governed by fear of HOA violations. One Saturday morning in May, the HOA organized a neighborhood cleanup day. Residents gathered to pick up litter, plant flowers in the common areas, and generally spruce up the place. I was surprised to see Patricia there, working alongside everyone else. She was quieter than she used to be, but she seemed genuinely engaged in helping. At one point, we ended up working near each other, pulling weeds from around the community garden. Murphy was lying in the grass nearby, enjoying the sunshine. Patricia's dog Daisy was there too, properly leashed and supervised. "Daisy is beautiful," I said, breaking the awkward silence. Patricia smiled, and it was the first genuine smile I had ever seen from her. "Thank you. She really is. I rescued her when she was 3 years old. She had been in a bad situation, and I wanted to give her a better life. I think maybe I became so protective of the neighborhood because I wanted to create this perfect, safe environment for her, but I went too far." "It's easy to let good intentions turn into something else," I agreed. "But it looks like you're finding balance now." "I'm trying. It's harder than I thought, admitting I was wrong and changing my behavior, but it's necessary." We worked in comfortable silence for a while after that. When the cleanup day ended, the neighborhood looked beautiful. Gregory gave a short speech thanking everyone for their hard work and reminding us that we were all part of this community together. As I walked home with Murphy, I reflected on everything that had happened over the past few months. It had started with a false accusation and a lot of stress, but it had ended with truth, justice, and even a form of reconciliation. The trail cameras had been the key to solving the mystery, providing undeniable evidence that cleared my name and revealed the real culprit. I had learned a lot about standing up for myself and not backing down when I knew I was right. I had also learned that communities function best when people are willing to admit their mistakes and make amends. That evening, I sat on my back porch with a beer, watching Murphy chase butterflies in the yard. My phone buzzed with a text from Tom inviting me to a barbecue the following weekend. I smiled and accepted the invitation. Life in Meadowbrook Estates had finally become what I had hoped it would be when I first moved in. A place where I felt at home, surrounded by neighbors who treated each other with respect and fairness. The HOA was still there, of course, with its rules and regulations. But under new leadership, it felt less like an authoritarian regime and more like what it was supposed to be: a group of people working together to maintain and improve their shared community. The dog waste incident became something of a legend in the neighborhood. New residents would hear the story and laugh about the irony of the HOA vice president accusing someone else of violations her own dog was committing. But those of us who had lived through it remembered the stress and the fear of being falsely accused. A few months later, in July, I was elected to the HOA board myself. Several neighbors had approached me and asked if I would consider running for the open secretary position after Harold moved out of state. I was hesitant at first, not wanting to get involved in HOA politics. But Tom convinced me that the board needed people who understood what it was like to be on the receiving end of overzealous enforcement. My first board meeting as secretary was surreal. I sat at the same table where I had been accused and defended myself. Patricia was still there as a regular board member, but she had become one of the more reasonable voices, often advocating for warnings and education over immediate fines. One of my first acts as secretary was to propose a formal appeals process for residents who felt they had been unfairly accused or fined. The board voted unanimously to adopt it. We also created clearer guidelines about what constituted evidence for violations and implemented a 3-strike system for most minor infractions. The changes were well received by the community. People started coming to board meetings more regularly, not because they were afraid of being called out, but because they actually wanted to participate in decisions about the neighborhood. In September, we organized a neighborhood dog park day, where residents could bring their pets to socialize in a designated area we had set aside in one of the larger common spaces. I brought Murphy, and to my surprise, Patricia showed up with Daisy. The 2 golden retrievers sniffed each other cautiously at first, then began playing together. They looked like they could be related, Patricia observed, watching them run around. Maybe they are, distantly. Golden retrievers are all pretty friendly, though, I said. I'm glad we're doing this, Patricia said. The dog park, I mean. It gives the dogs a proper place to exercise and socialize. I wish we had done something like this years ago. Maybe Daisy wouldn't have felt the need to escape if she had more outlets for her energy. It's never too late to make improvements, I said. Patricia nodded thoughtfully. Derek, I want you to know that I'm really glad you joined the board. You've brought a perspective that we were missing, someone who remembers what it's like to feel powerless against the HOA. Thanks, Patricia. That means a lot coming from you. We stood there for a while, watching our dogs play, 2 neighbors who had been at war just months ago, now working together to make the community better. It was a strange turn of events, but also a hopeful one. As fall approached and the leaves began to change color, I found myself actually looking forward to board meetings and HOA events. We started a monthly newsletter highlighting positive things happening in the neighborhood instead of just listing violations and fines. We organized a Halloween decoration contest, a Thanksgiving food drive, and began planning a holiday lights competition for December. The transformation of the HOA from a feared enforcement body to an actual community organization was remarkable. Property values in Meadowbrook Estates actually increased during this time, not because of strict rule enforcement, but because people wanted to live in a neighborhood that felt welcoming and supportive. One evening in November, I was walking Murphy after dark when I ran into Patricia doing the same with Daisy. We fell into step together, our dogs walking happily side by side. It's getting cold again, Patricia observed. Soon there will be snow. Yeah, I was thinking about that. Last winter was rough with all the accusations and police visits. Patricia winced. I still feel terrible about that. Calling the police was way over the line. I was so convinced I was right that I didn't care about the impact on you. We've moved past it, I said. But I do think it's important to remember. It's easy to get caught up in enforcing rules and forget about the people behind them. I won't forget, Patricia said quietly. That's a mistake I'll never make again. We walked in silence for a bit. Then Patricia said, "You know, I've been thinking about what you said about admitting mistakes. I think I should make a public statement at the next board meeting, acknowledging what happened and apologizing to the community for my behavior. Not just to you, but to everyone I may have treated unfairly over the years." I looked at her with newfound respect. "That would be a powerful gesture, Patricia. I think a lot of people would appreciate hearing that." "It won't be easy, but it's the right thing to do," she said. At the December board meeting, Patricia stood up during the public comment period and delivered a heartfelt apology to the community. She talked about how she had lost sight of the purpose of the HOA and had become focused on control rather than community. She acknowledged specific instances where she had been overly harsh or unfair, and she committed to doing better. The room was silent when she finished. Then, slowly, people began to applaud. It wasn't a roaring ovation, but it was genuine appreciation for her honesty and courage. After the meeting, several residents approached Patricia to thank her or share their own stories of growth and change. It was a healing moment for the entire community. As the year came to a close, I reflected on everything that had transpired. What had started as a nightmare scenario with false accusations and police involvement had ultimately led to positive changes for everyone. The HOA had reformed its practices. Patricia had undergone a personal transformation, and the community had become stronger and more united. Murphy remained blissfully unaware of his role in all of this. He continued his daily routine of eating, playing, sleeping, and going for walks, never knowing that he had been at the center of a neighborhood controversy that changed everything. On New Year's Eve, the HOA organized a neighborhood celebration in the community center. Families gathered with food and drinks, kids ran around playing games, and at midnight, we all counted down together. When the clock struck 12, I found myself standing next to Patricia and Tom, along with dozens of other neighbors, all of us shouting "Happy New Year" in unison. Patricia turned to me and raised her glass. "To new beginnings and second chances. To honest mistakes and genuine apologies," Tom added. "To community," I said, and we all clinked our glasses together. As I drove home that night with Murphy asleep in the passenger seat, I thought about how different this New Year's Eve was from the previous one. Last year at this time, I had been alone in a new house in an unfamiliar neighborhood, nervous about fitting in and following all the HOA rules. This year, I was part of a community, with friends and neighbors who knew my name, and I was actually serving on the board helping to shape that community's future. The dog waste incident under the snow had been a catalyst for change that no one could have predicted. It had exposed problems, forced difficult conversations, and ultimately led to growth and healing. The trail cameras, installed to catch me in the act of a violation I hadn't committed, had instead revealed the truth and sparked a transformation. January arrived with fresh snow, covering the neighborhood in white once again. But this time, instead of viewing the snow with anxiety and worry about hidden accusations, I saw it as beautiful and peaceful. Murphy loved playing in it, jumping through the drifts and catching snowflakes on his tongue. One morning, I was shoveling my driveway when Patricia came out to shovel hers. We waved at each other and she called out, "Make sure to salt your walkway. We don't want any slip and fall incidents." I laughed. "Yes, madam, I'm on it." It was a moment of lightness that would have been impossible a year ago. Patricia could make suggestions about neighborhood safety without it feeling like an attack or a threat of fines. I could respond with humor without feeling defensive or angry. Later that week, I got an email from Gregory announcing that we had received an award from the County Homeowners Association network. Meadowbrook Estates had been recognized for most improved community engagement and best practices in conflict resolution. The email specifically mentioned our implementation of evidence-based enforcement policies and our creation of an appeals process for residents. At the next board meeting, Gregory presented the award and gave credit where it was due. This recognition is the result of everyone's hard work and willingness to change. Patricia, your honesty about past mistakes showed real leadership. Derek, your willingness to join the board after everything you went through demonstrated remarkable grace. And to all our residents, thank you for giving us a chance to do better. The award was displayed in the community center lobby, a symbol of how far we had come. In February, exactly 1 year after the police had shown up at my door, I was walking Murphy near the mailboxes when I noticed the trail cameras were still there, still blinking their red lights. But now they felt different. They weren't tools of surveillance and entrapment. They were safety measures, protection for responsible pet owners and a deterrent for the genuinely irresponsible. I looked down at Murphy, who was wagging his tail and looking up at me expectantly. You know, buddy, a year ago we were in the middle of a nightmare because of these mailboxes. Now look at us. We're on the HOA board. We're making the rules instead of just following them. Murphy barked once, which I chose to interpret as approval. That evening, I sat down at my computer and began writing a proposal for the next board meeting. It was a comprehensive plan for improving community engagement, including regular social events, a neighborhood website where residents could connect and share information, and a mentorship program where longtime residents could welcome newcomers and help them understand the HOA covenant in a friendly, non-threatening way. I sent the proposal to Gregory and the other board members and received enthusiastic responses from everyone, including Patricia. She suggested several additions, including a community garden expansion and a dog training workshop series. At the March board meeting, we approved the community engagement plan unanimously. Over the next few months, we implemented each element, and the neighborhood continued to transform. New residents mentioned in their feedback surveys that they had chosen Meadowbrook Estates specifically because of its reputation as a welcoming, well-managed community. Property values continued to rise. Covenant violations actually decreased, not because enforcement became stricter, but because residents felt more invested in maintaining the neighborhood when they felt like part of a supportive community, rather than subjects of an authoritarian regime. In May, we held the second annual Neighborhood Cleanup Day, and turnout was twice what it had been the previous year. Patricia organized the volunteer teams with impressive efficiency, channeling her organizational skills into positive action rather than aggressive enforcement. During a break, Tom pulled me aside. You know, I've lived here for 20 years and this is the best the neighborhood has ever been. You standing up to Patricia last year, that changed everything. It wasn't just me, I said. It was the cameras revealing the truth. It was Patricia being willing to admit she was wrong. It was Gregory and the board being willing to make changes. It was the whole community deciding to do better. True, Tom agreed. But you were the catalyst. You didn't just roll over when you were falsely accused. You fought back with facts and evidence. You showed everyone that the HOA doesn't have to be feared. It can be challenged and changed. I felt a swell of pride at his words. What had seemed like a personal nightmare had turned into an opportunity to make lasting positive change for everyone. As summer arrived, Murphy and I continued our daily walks, now without any fear or anxiety. We explored every corner of the neighborhood, and I knew almost everyone we passed by name. People would stop to pet Murphy and chat about neighborhood news or upcoming events. Patricia's dog Daisy became something of a neighborhood celebrity. Everyone knew the story of how she had been the real culprit behind the dog waste controversy, and Patricia had learned to laugh about it instead of feeling ashamed. She even made T-shirts for the neighborhood dog park that said, "Daisy did it," with a cartoon golden retriever. The shirts were a hit and raised money for the local animal shelter. In August, I was nominated for HOA president. Gregory had decided to step down after 5 years in the role, feeling it was time for new leadership. I was hesitant at first, remembering how much stress and work the position required. But multiple board members and dozens of residents encouraged me to accept the nomination. "You've shown what kind of leader you are," Linda said. "You're fair, you're reasonable, and you understand both sides of HOA management. We need someone like you as president." Even Patricia encouraged me. "You'd be an excellent president, Derek. You have the temperament for it and the vision to keep moving us in the right direction." I accepted the nomination and ran unopposed. In September, I was officially elected as the new president of the Meadowbrook Estates HOA. Patricia was elected as treasurer, a position that suited her attention to detail, but had less enforcement authority than her previous role as vice president. My first meeting as president felt surreal. I sat in Gregory's former seat, looking out at the residents gathered for the monthly meeting. Murphy was at home, probably asleep on the couch, unaware that his owner was now running the HOA that had once tried to fine him thousands of dollars for violations he didn't commit. I opened the meeting with a speech about my vision for the community: transparency, fairness, engagement, and continuous improvement. I talked about the importance of rules, but also the importance of compassion and common sense in enforcing them. I challenged everyone, board members and residents alike, to see the HOA not as us versus them, but as all of us working together. The speech was well received, and we moved into a productive meeting covering various neighborhood issues. When we got to new business, one resident raised a concern about someone repeatedly parking their car too far into the street, creating a potential hazard. My first instinct was to send a warning letter and threaten fines, which is what the old HOA would have done. But I caught myself and suggested a different approach. Let's have someone from the board talk to the resident in person, in a friendly way, to make them aware of the issue. Maybe they don't realize their parking is causing a problem. Let's give them a chance to correct it before we move to warnings or fines. The board agreed, and Patricia volunteered to handle it. The next week, she reported back that she had spoken to the resident, who had been mortified to learn they were causing an issue, and immediately changed their parking habits. No fines, no angry letters, just a neighborly conversation that solved the problem. It was exactly the kind of HOA management I wanted to see. Problems solved through communication rather than punishment. As autumn arrived and the leaves turned brilliant shades of red and gold, I found myself thinking back to that cold February morning when the police had shown up at my door. It felt like a lifetime ago. So much had changed, not just for me, but for the entire community. The dog waste incident had been a turning point, a moment that exposed deep problems and forced everyone to confront them. The trail cameras had provided irrefutable evidence that led to truth and justice. Patricia's public humiliation had been painful but ultimately necessary for her growth and the community's healing. and my decision to fight back against false accusations instead of accepting them had sparked a movement toward reform. Murphy was getting older now, showing a bit of gray around his muzzle. But he was still energetic and happy, still loved his daily walks around the neighborhood. He had been innocent all along, of course, but even if the evidence had shown otherwise, I would have stood by him and taken responsibility. That's what being a good pet owner means. Daisy was aging too, slower on her walks with Patricia, but still spunky and adventurous. The two dogs had become good friends, often playing together at neighborhood events. It was fitting, somehow, that the two golden retrievers at the center of the controversy had ended up as companions. In December, we held our second annual holiday lights competition. Nearly every house in the neighborhood participated, creating a spectacular display that attracted visitors from all over Boulder. Local news even came out to do a story, interviewing me as HOA president about what made Meadowbrook Estates special. I talked about community engagement, resident involvement, and fair governance. I mentioned how we had transformed from an enforcement-focused HOA to a community-focused one, and how that shift had improved life for everyone. The reporter asked if there had been a specific incident that catalyzed the change. I glanced at Patricia, who was standing nearby helping to organize the judging process. She gave me a small nod. "Actually, yes," I said. "About 2 years ago, there was a situation involving dog waste violations. Someone was falsely accused, but through careful investigation and evidence gathering, we discovered the truth. That incident taught us the importance of facts over assumptions, evidence over accusations, and compassion over punishment. It changed everything." The story aired that evening, and the next day, I received dozens of emails from residents of other neighborhoods asking for advice on reforming their own HOAs. I spent several weekends consulting with other communities, sharing what we had learned and helping them implement similar changes. Meadowbrook Estates became something of a model for HOA reform, proof that even the most dysfunctional community associations could change for the better with the right leadership and willingness to admit past mistakes. As another year ended and a new one began, I stood at my window watching snow fall gently over the neighborhood. Murphy was beside me, his tail wagging slowly as he watched the snowflakes. I thought about everything that had happened since that first accusation. All the stress and anger and fear, but also all the growth and change and improvement that had come from it. The dog waste under the snow had revealed more than just Daisy's secret morning excursions. It had revealed the flaws in our community's governance, the dangers of unchecked authority, and the importance of evidence and fairness. It had forced difficult conversations and painful admissions, but ultimately it had made us all better. Better neighbors, better leaders, better people. I looked down at Murphy, who looked back up at me with those loyal golden retriever eyes, and I smiled. "You know what, buddy? I'm actually grateful for what happened. Without Patricia falsely accusing us, none of this positive change would have occurred." Sometimes the worst moments lead to the best outcomes. Murphy barked once in agreement, then went back to watching the snow. And as I stood there, president of an HOA that had once been my enemy but was now my responsibility and pride, I felt truly at home in Meadowbrook Estates for the first time. The trail cameras were still out there, still monitoring the common areas. But now, they represented transparency and protection rather than surveillance and entrapment. Now they were tools for truth, ensuring that no one else would ever be falsely accused the way I had been. And somewhere in the neighborhood, in a house 4 doors down, Patricia was probably looking out her own window at the same snow, perhaps thinking similar thoughts about transformation and redemption. We had both been changed by the incident, both forced to confront uncomfortable truths about ourselves and our community. The difference was, we had chosen to learn from it rather than hide from it. We had chosen growth over stagnation, honesty over denial, community over control. And that choice had made all the difference. As I finally turned away from the window and headed to bed, I felt a profound sense of peace. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new decisions, new opportunities to lead the HOA in a positive direction. But tonight, I could rest easy knowing that justice had been served, truth had prevailed, and a community had been transformed. All because of dog waste under the snow and the courage to demand evidence before accepting blame.